Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. First and foremost, I'd like to extend my sincere congratulations to the 57 member countries of the Islamic Development Bank and of course its board and management for the bank's Golden Jubilee, recognizing 50 years of continuous efforts to foster socio-economic development in member countries and beyond. Congratulations once again. So I'm deeply honored to introduce a man who properly needs no introduction, but I'll give it a try anyway. He's not only a software pioneer who put a PC on every desk, but also a philanthropist who's putting hope in millions of hearts around the world. So please join me in welcoming a true partner in progress, a man who believes that innovation is the most powerful tool in our toolkit, with the only thing more impressive than his resume is his vision for a better future. Mr. Bill Gates.
Thank you.
So dear Bill, I've had the privilege really of speaking with you and learning from you on a number of occasions over the past decade or so. And if I had to pick one thing that I take away from our conversations, it's your ability to apply realistic optimism to the many difficult large-scale issues that you've set out to address. Someone defined realistic optimism as a tendency to maintain a positive outlook within the constraints of the available measurable phenomena as situated in the physical and social world. Would you say that this is a broadly accurate description of the way in which you approach many of these big ticket challenges?
Well, yeah, I'd say, I have been very lucky in my life. So the idea that I'm, optimistic and see possibilities, partly stems from that, partly just a characteristic, but also very objectively, we are making progress. The human condition today, although we, all know many places we ought to be doing better, it is better than ever before. Life expectancy is longer, more children survive past the age of 5. The opportunities to take innovation, which is accelerating, and apply that to reduce inequality has never been so great. So, I believe it's not just an emotional state, but it's factual that we can drive progress, and we have made progress.
You've often talked about your first visit to Africa in 1993, I believe, where you, of course, witnessed firsthand the immense suffering and inequalities, of course, that was present on the continent and indeed elsewhere, that was leading to the death of millions of children every year. And thanks to yours and others' efforts over the years, just as you've mentioned now, many of those trend lines are heading now in the same direction. However, of course, there are still many complex, stubborn, structural problems that must be tackled. More philanthropists from this region of the world are looking to deploy their energies and their capital globally. But many are faced with the dilemma of wanting to have global impact at the same time as prioritizing the numerous local and regional urgent needs, which of course are many. How did you decide to balance local versus global in your giving, and how has that evolved over time?
Well, yeah, when we started the Gates Foundation, we had 2 primary causes we decided that we'd focus on, education and health. And the health mandate was very much a global mandate, to understand why children died and how we could help them live a healthy life and achieve their full potential. And even though, I was quite concerned about how would that work, what do we know about governments in Africa and, people accepting new tools or, medical practices, I saw it as such an underfunded area. And in fact, over time, that health work, if you include our work on food and agriculture as well, that's now over 90% of what we do, because the need and opportunity there and the impact was so dramatic. You know, it's basically saving lives for less than $1,000 per life saved. And, you know, so many things that just weren't being done, and now through partnerships, including with incredible groups like the Islamic Development Bank, areas like malaria, malnutrition, pneumonia, diarrhea are getting addressed. Our education work, we still maintain it, you know, at a significant level of about 900 million per year in the United States. But in fact, you know, that's more of a tough one, because the, you know, the way the teachers want to teach, the local governance, the union, you know, to my surprise, although we've had some positive impact there, it's not dramatic. It's, you know, we have no equivalent to the overall progress of going from, right as the foundation is founded, over 10 million children die under the age of 5 every year, to now, even though the birth cohort is slightly larger, less than 5 million die. And, you know, clearly we ought to be able to get from that 5 million down, cut that in half again to 2.5 million. That in fact was adopted by the United Nations in their Sustainable Development Goals. Unfortunately, because of pandemic, financial conditions, and instability, including Gaza, including Ukraine, many places in Africa, we're not on track to do that. But it's still, even though we'll miss the 2030 goal for that, it's just a question of when. And so, you know, I believe everyone should do philanthropy in their community. You know, you get to learn from it, you get to be hands-on, you owe your community something. In our case, it's only, you know, 10% of what we do. And if all we cared about was impact per dollar, we would do 100% global, you know, the sort of rational thing to do. And, you know, our compromise is that we're about 90% in helping the poor countries and 10% on the United States.
So just to set some context, I read in your annual letter that the foundation, the Gates Foundation, intends to increase its own giving to $9 billion per year by 2026. Yet your foundation is also a participant in numerous collaborative initiatives with others, including, of course, the likes of Co-Impact, the End Fund, the Polio Eradication Fund, to name a few. 10 years ago, of course, you attended the 40th anniversary of the Islamic Development Bank, where you announced a partnership with the bank, as was mentioned, the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development, and other, of course, Gulf partners, which became known as the Lives and Livelihoods Fund. 10 years later, you're back, and you've announced LLF 2.0 amongst a number of other partnerships, so many congratulations for that. Can you tell us more about this particular partnership, the LLF? What constitutes success in your mind, and a little bit about your general approach to these collaboratives?
Well, you know, I'd say that all of our greatest successes have come through partnerships. We have a number of things where we fund research and development, like on breakthrough vaccines, where we're able to operate on our own, you know, because we have such deep expertise, and the cost to do that, we can be on our own. But that's more the exception. You know, the two most successful things we've done as a foundation is help create a fund to buy vaccines for poor children. That's Gavi. And the second is to create this global fund, which was a group of governments and philanthropists working on HIV, TB, and malaria. LLF 1.0 came together in that, you know, same spirit of, okay, can we combine the expertise? You know, the bank knows the countries that are its member countries, and some of those member countries, like this country, have been very successful, and some are still in an early stage of development, including Pakistan, Nigeria, but many others as well. And so, the bank has a deep expertise in these countries, really important relationships with these countries. Our foundation has deep expertise in health and increasingly in agriculture. And so we thought, let's build a team of analytical people inside the bank that will draw on expertise from not only the bank, but the Gates Foundation as well. And, even though that was a completely new idea, all the donors came together, and we're very proud of what came out of that. And that's why today, this week is a huge milestone, because we have Saudi Arabia recommitting. We've recommitted. We look forward. We think we'll get many other donors recommitted and go on and do even more than we did with 1.0. And there's a whole list of things, including polio, malaria, agriculture, including in Pakistan and Nigeria and other places that are daunting, and yet the needs there are so incredible. And so it's a combining of strengths, and that leap of faith that built the partnership has borne out.
So staying on the topic of collaboration, as we heard earlier from His Excellency President Al-Jasser, matching philanthropy and development finance requires a long-term perspective. Your foundation, obviously, and the bank, a great example. And you've been working together on a number of things, including, of course, polio. Why do you think we're not seeing more scalable partnerships between philanthropists and MDBs, multilateral development banks?
Well, to draw philanthropists in to these causes, you really, you have to give them a chance to go on the ground, meet the people, feel like it's a dramatic intervention. The temptation is that, we don't see the needs in these countries. And, if our neighbor was suffering from malaria, of course we'd buy a bed net and get them to it. If they had tuberculosis, of course we'd help, go buy the drugs and get them to be treated. If their kids weren't getting the vaccines, we'd figure out a way to solve that. So the distance is our enemy, that, our fellow humans, our co-religionists, they're suffering, but, how often do we go to the north of Nigeria and see that, see the need, and then go out and see these projects? There's a whole group of diseases called neglected tropical diseases that, anyone who goes and sees that and sees that the treatments are so inexpensive is drawn in and, wants to help out with that, but it's still not even fully funding all that needs to be done there. I thought when the internet came along, we'd be able to bridge that distance so you could go out and look and see these things. I'd still say we're very far short of that. It's still very different to go in person and meet and talk to the recipients. And so, how do we get not everyone to go, but, people who can come back and bear witness and say, no, it's not some, far away unknown result. This is gigantic in human terms. Even in our partnership with the United States government, one of our most valuable things has been having politicians, senators in particular, go over to Africa. Often, they'll take their wife along with them, and it's the wife who says, hey, look at this, you need to do more. And the senator will say, okay, I will. And, it's that concrete nature of it overcomes the doubt, even a little bit of cynicism we have about things in faraway places. And, we don't share the good news of our progress. How do you motivate people? Well, partly you show them how dire the situation is, but that alone, isn't going to get you there. Then you make them kind of want to turn away. It seems endless. You also want to give the sense of opportunity. And so it's kind of a duality. We've made a lot of progress, but only with increased generosity can we take what are still very tough situations, kids dying of measles, malaria, mothers dying because you don't have very inexpensive tools to stop their bleeding after they've delivered a child, and yet, innovation that's giving us more and more of those tools. Some of them are incredibly low cost. I'll just give this one example because to me it's so amazing. About a third of the women who die in childbirth, it actually is this bleeding problem. And we knew there were a couple of shots you could give to help stop that. But the understanding of which women needed those shots was unclear. And so the idea was to put a plastic mat underneath with a small cup, so that you could actually see the blood loss rather than trying to sort of guess at that. And by telling people to use these tools at a pretty modest blood loss level, we were able to cut down by 70% these deaths. And these, it's $2 of drugs. And usually when they do medical trials, this was a 3-year trial, but in a year, they actually look at the data to see if the placebo arm and the treatment arm, how they're differing. And often what they'll see is that you're not having much impact, and so they'll say the trial's futile. Very rarely your impact is so incredible that they decide continuing a trial where you have some patients receiving placebo, that is no drug at all, that's completely unethical. And so this was the case, that a year into it, they called us up and says, you've got to stop this trial. And we go, why? And they say, because we cannot do placebo. We must use this tool. And so that's just one example that, will save not only hundreds of thousands of lives, but what that means, for the children who are involved in that is pretty dramatic.
Yeah, and a very powerful example. So thank you for that. Since you brought up the internet and the role of technology, when you think about collaboration, we ostensibly mean collaboration between human beings. What future do you see for collaboration in philanthropy with the machine? What impact do you think the maturation of technologies like AI and blockchain will have on philanthropy in the years to come?
Yeah, I cannot overstate the impact that AI is going to have on every field of human endeavor. Whether it's discovering new drugs for healthcare intervention, whether it's delivering medical advice, whether it's giving every kid a personal tutor that talks to them in their language and not only understands the subject area, but also understands their motivation and how to keep them engaged in a particular topic. There was kind of a breakthrough in this area with the ChatGPT-4 less than 2 years ago. And so we are at the very earliest stage of this, and yet already, where do we have the most shortage of doctors? In Africa. Most people never see a doctor, not once in their life. Where do we have the greatest shortage of teachers? Well, in Africa. And so, the opportunity now to take this and, give great advice to somebody who's pregnant. We're actually connecting the ultrasound up to the AI, and it can diagnose whether your delivery is going to be a simple one or be complicated. So, in advance, you can tell the mother, hey, you should get to a healthcare place where, if necessary, they can do a C-section, or no, you can stay at home. It's just fine. And that AI is showing unbelievable ability to predict and help out. And it's a very cheap. The actual sensors now only a few $100s. So AI is coming into all of these different endeavors. And, so one of the things I say is, okay, if somebody's putting $100 billion into philanthropy, whether it's Microsoft or Google or Saudi Arabia or whoever, let's reserve a few percent of that so that we have some of that capacity on a philanthropic basis for healthcare in poor countries or education in poor countries. It isn't taken shape yet, and I think actually, that's going to be one of the topics that as we deepen what the Gates Foundation is doing here in the Middle East, including the leading countries, saying, okay, you're all excited about AI, you're getting out in the front, you're going to provide a lot of the data centers, but let's not only do the commercial side, let's also do the humanitarian side as that becomes clear.
So moving to another stubborn challenge, climate change, or maybe we're the stubborn ones. We're just past the 4-month mark since COP28 UAE and the historic UAE consensus. And the sort of whole of society approach that was really the vision of Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber saw the most inclusive climate conference in the world, where we had, I think, the most geographically diverse convening, but also sectorally diverse. And I saw that firsthand. I had the honor to chair the Business and Philanthropy Climate Forum, which you very kindly participated in, and we had 1,300 CEOs and 400 foundation heads from over 80 countries in the world, all bringing their unique strengths to be greater than the sum of their parts, helping to deliver new initiatives and projects, and just that one conference itself, over $8 billion in new commitments. And I think it's accepted now, or at least I hope it's accepted, that we need the authentic engagement of philanthropy and business if we're going to move from pledges and announcements to action and implementation. Are you optimistic that we're going to see more cross-sectoral collaboration for climate and nature action? And how concerned are you that we're currently off track in meeting the climate goals set by the UN?
Well, there's another topic where it's definitely a glass half full. I think that COP meeting significantly exceeded my expectations. Not only was it hosted very well, but also the spirit that the businesses coming into it showed, as well as the philanthropists, was very impressive to me. And what we saw was a mixing of small innovative companies who have new climate ideas, some of them financed by a group I helped create called Breakthrough Energy, but not only those companies, that they were able to meet with the big companies and say, okay, this is still early stage. It needs to be scaled up. As we scale it up, we need to get the cost to come down. And so the amount of collaboration across every area of emissions is quite good. Sadly, we are not going to meet the most ambitious goals. And so at the same time as we reduce emissions, which they call mitigation, we also have to continue to help out the poorest, not by diverting money away from the things we're doing, but think about health as even more important. And where is climate going to make health more difficult? Likewise, we still need education. So it's all still in this development framework, but with climate being a headwind, that makes development even harder than if we didn't have that there. I don't think we're going to miss the goal by a dramatic amount, but there's a lot of things up in the air. Fission, fusion, green hydrogen. We need, on some of these innovations, we need to actually surprise people on how quickly we bring it into practice and how quickly we scale it up. So, it's this great challenge to humanity. like many other areas, we'll be able to use some of the new AI tools for discovery, and so that'll be a positive contributor.
So I can't end a discussion with you without bringing up the family. A lot of what I do and the way in which I do it has been inspired by observing my parents over the years. I always say that my parents taught me everything I know, but haven't yet taught me everything that they know. Last year, you became a grandfather, so congratulations once again, and openly commented how this gave new dimension to your work. What key lessons did you learn from your late mother and father that inspired your philanthropic journey? And how do you transpose those value systems onto your children and now grandchildren?
Well, I was very lucky that not only did my parents set a great example of generosity with financially, but also in terms of the time that they gave. They were very, very involved in the community. In fact, when my dad wrote his memoirs, his title was Showing Up for Life, that you really got to show up and show up in your community again and again and again. And he really modeled that behavior for me. Likewise, my mom, when Microsoft was getting successful, said, hey, you've got to get your employees as part of payroll deduction, helping out with these community activities. And that's super important. And so we went ahead and we did that. In fact, when I finally did start the foundation and I was still full-time at Microsoft, my dad was the first co-chair and got things going for about 8 years until I was able to retire and make the foundation my full-time work. So, yeah, I do think parents kind of set the trend, so that when people say to me, why do you do philanthropy? I have to think, okay, I saw that as a role model. Now, through luck, I was able to do it at a scale that went beyond, but the spirit of it is exactly that way. And, so, yeah, I think it's very much families. We encourage, families to think about philanthropy as something that really brings them together, that they can, view as a great, both responsibility, but a fun activity.
So final question, if I may. What would you do differently if you were starting again, if anything?
Well, certainly a lot of the results have been better than I expected. And the work where we do innovation on new vaccines and new drugs, we're working on better seeds, we're working on ways of reducing mosquito populations. It all looks very, very promising. The innovation side is going better than I expected. The thing that I guess I don't have much control over is that the stability in the world, the amount of unrest, which is this huge setback. It's a setback in the areas where you have the unrest. It's also a gigantic effect in that, now European countries that are the most generous in aid are feeling this need to actually cut their aid budgets. So the EU, France, UK, Germany have all in the last 18 months cut their aid budgets. And, partly it's the demands from Ukraine, partly they have to raise their defense budget. And so if we didn't have this unrest, then we wouldn't, be having this challenge, which particularly given interest rates being high, the recipient countries are going to have to really prioritize the spending that we have there. We've certainly made a lot of mistakes. In education, I was over-optimistic about our ability to influence educational practices. The politics of that were complex. I still believe in what we're doing there, although now a lot of that bet is connected with this AI tool that, this time I'm sure we'll get this to be right, and that's something that will apply not only to the United States but the world at large. I was certainly naive, but you probably have to learn by doing a bit. You always bring a little bit of your previous work, into your new work, so, my belief in technology, that had to be mapped onto, okay, but how do you deliver in rural areas? In northern Nigeria, okay, how do you help the government get the primary healthcare system to be strong? That's a new set of skills. And of course, hiring people to help us do that and building those partnerships, that was all very new. But I'd say a lot of the things I look at, it's foolish that we did early on or things that didn't work. It was a necessary part of learning curve. It took at least 5 years before I felt like the quality of the work we were doing was comparable in terms of the excellence to the very best work I had done at Microsoft. That, when I would sit with the team and we would admit, oh, this didn't work, okay. Did somebody else do it better? What were we going to do next time? But as we've gone along, I really feel like the excellence is there. I love the work. This is my job, giving away all the rest of the money. It'll take me another 20 years to do that well. That kind of matches how much money there is. So, it's been a great joy.
It's really incredible. I've got about another 340 questions for you, Bill. However, all good things must come to an end. The good news, of course, is great things can happen again. So I greatly look forward to the next opportunity. Dear Bill, on behalf of my friends at the Islamic Development Bank and all of you here, and of course those watching online, thank you for sharing today. Thank you for everything that you have done, that you continue to do. Thank you for the partnerships here in Saudi Arabia, in the UAE, and elsewhere in the region that I have no doubt will continue to thrive and scale, inshallah. A big show of appreciation for Mr. Bill Gates.
Thank you.